guys, we have someone special. We have Sister Shirley. She's from the Lila Mace House, and Shirley does an amazing job helping victims, and she'll tell us more about her organization. Shirley, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody here?
I'm Sister Shirley Finneran, and I am a Dubuque, Iowa Franciscan sister. And I have been in social work profession most of my life. I taught social work for many years. And since 2015, I have been involved in educating people about human trafficking. And since 2017, I have started working on a house for adult women who have been sex trafficked.
How do you absorb this on a day-to-day basis? It's such a heavy, I don't want to call it draining, but it's such a heavy
Reality.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah, it
Uh,
is.
how do you handle it? How does that somehow reflect or affect on your family?
This is the most difficult and challenging work I've done in my life. And I have worked with many different people. I've worked with people who are poor. I've worked with immigration issues with people, and it's very difficult work. So most of my gray hair has come in the last few years as I
Wow.
have worked in this area. It's hard, um, but the rewards are when I hear the women that we help say, for instance, that this is the first time in their life that they feel that they have been loved and cared for. That makes it all worth it.
What does your organization do? When you say adult sex trafficking, what does that mean?
Many people are uh, trafficked beginning when they are in their young and teenage years, and many do not get out of it or survive until they are adults. I have worked more with adults than children in my life, and I also know the laws surrounding working with children, which are much more difficult. And so I decided that adult women 18 and over was the group that I chose to work with. Um, and I they have all so our youngest one that we have had in our house is 19, and the oldest I think was 52. So it's been, and I always tell people I taught social work. I've been a social work administrator all my life, and I knew about human trafficking. And I thought, as many people have thought, this is what happens in other countries. And so um, when I had my eyes opened in 2015, I've been educating people ever since. I probably have given educational presentations to um, about 5,000 people in the last years, both starting at age 8 and through total adulthood. So, in the last month, I've talked to probably about 600 children um, and I particularly focus more on sex trafficking than I do labor trafficking.
I see.
But both are very much alive. But so our house is it's a 2 year program that women can stay in, and it's really to provide a safe place where they can heal and they can rest and really just learn to become independent um, and women who and empowered, and that they know that they are loved and that they can learn to be self-sufficient and know that they have worth and dignity. Several of our uh, persons have come from referrals from a behavioral health center in the hospital. Either they were there for various reasons,
Right.
law enforcement from another agency, And I would say probably about a third of the women call themselves. They hear about us, or they were given our information, or they went online to look up agencies that served adult women
I
who are survivors.
So your agency doesn't go out seeking, you
No,
get people come to
right,
you either
right,
via law enforcement, hospitals, or different agencies, or
correct,
people get in touch with you directly. Now,
correct.
if
So
I,
and
if I'm sorry, go ahead.
one of the reasons that I don't go out, although we do teach people, what to watch for. As you know, human trafficking, both sex labor and other types of trafficking, it's very dangerous and it's a crime. And the traffickers will stop at nothing to keep their victims. And so in the beginning, I was a little bit more afraid of my safety, but I have not ever been approached or really afraid in that way. Um, so and it's it's a dangerous kind of thing. And I when I do education, I really am not encouraging people to go rescue, but to I give them the numbers to call. And there are some Iowa numbers they can call. They can call the national hotline. Um, and because many people, uh, many victims who are in process of being trafficked, won't they have a high level of fear and trust issues. And so if I were to approach someone, let's say in a convenience store, which is pretty much what I talk about when I tell people that's where they might encounter them, they can ask them if they're safe or if they need help, but they usually will not tell them the truth because of the fear that they have of their trafficker.
I want to ask you that. That is a question I wanted to ask.
Mhm.
Why are the victims so fearful of their traffickers?
It's really part of the grooming process, which can take, more than a year sometimes with some people, because of course the traffickers, primarily the main way that persons are recruited today is through social media, because they have threatened to kill them, and they do. They have threatened to kill their family. So by the time that
Kill their
they,
family.
yes,
Not only
yes,
kill the victims, but also kill the family.
yes,
Now, is
yes,
this happening in America?
yes, yes.
So
They,
in America, I am understanding this correctly. In America, you have a trafficker who can threaten another person and not
yes,
only say to you them that I'm going to kill you, but I'm also going to kill your entire family.
exactly.
And
And
has
then
that
if,
happened, or it's
yes,
just a threat so far?
no, it has happened. And so some of the women that we've had at the house have seen people be killed in front of them, and they were next, and they were able to get away from that. If they have, so a question I often get asked by teenage girls when I do presentation is whether the women get pregnant. And of course, if someone has been raped or forced to have sex, up to 20 times a day, it's not too likely she's going to get pregnant just because of what's happened to her body. But if they do get pregnant, sometimes depending on the trafficker, they might have them have an abortion. But if the victim has a child, then that child is also used um, as as something that they'll kill the child or they'll harm the child. And also just even the members of the people in what's called a stable, the group of people that are being trafficked, if one person does something that the trafficker doesn't like, or whoever is guarding them doesn't like, the whole group gets punished and gets beaten. And so they use such fear and such tactics, and they're not just told to them, um, like we might do this. They see that being done. They see people being beaten. They have been beaten, and so they know that those are real threats. So so back to like when people may want to rescue them, um, the person will often not tell the truth because they don't know if I would be working for the trafficker asking them if they're safe or if I can help them.
I'm just in disbelief that this is happening in America. I'm actually going to take you back to the conversation where you just told, where you just mentioned to me that the entire family is being threatened by a trafficker
Mhm.
or pimp, you want to call
Yes,
them. And that is happening here in America, which I personally don't think that this is not the land that it could happen. Am I just
right.
in disbelief, or am I in a la la land? Like, why don't I believe that?
We have been made to believe in the United States that that those kinds of crimes to people and buying people and using people don't happen here. It happens it happens in other countries. I mean, I used to believe that myself, and I always, when I do a lot of my presentations, I say, um, isn't human trafficking what happens in Thailand or India or Europe or New York or Chicago, but in Iowa or in North Dakota where you've done some work, it's like, and I always tell people I teach social work. I should have known, and I didn't know. And so it's been a it's been a well kept secret.
Oh, this is what I'm understanding. You have an organization, and your organization helps adults who have been abused or forced to be trafficked.
Right.
Um, and you get them mostly from law enforcement, hospitals, different agencies,
And
and
the victims themselves.
the victims themselves. They go online and they find you and they contact you. Aren't they afraid at this point that their trafficker is going to approach you? Aren't you
Well,
afraid of that?
by the time they contact us, they are out of the life. They're out of being trafficked. So I've only had a couple of people who were being trafficked, and one of them was from Sioux City, and her husband was trafficking her. So
My God.
parents traffic their kids, and I know this happens in Sioux City as well. So when we look at like who is vulnerable, okay, people who are poor, who need money, um, people who are may have some kind of a uh, emotional or mental disability, who are vulnerable, people who are lonely, people who just are on the side of any kind of great need. And so people who used to sell drugs, if they get caught with the drugs, you have the drugs and you might have the drug paraphernalia. So many of them have either switched to human trafficking or they've added that. So the big part about human trafficking is whether it's labor and for sure sex trafficking, is that in order to prosecute the trafficker, one must have proof, and the proof is the victim. And many times the victim is not willing to testify, or they're dead. So a lot of a lot of people who are victims take their own life, or they are killed. And so and they're so when I see and hear on the television or whatever that a person is missing, especially a woman or a child or whatever, um, my mind always goes to trafficking, and that if the person was taken to be trafficked, if if we are looking for the person, which of course we want to do, we want to find the person, but that media attention is not what the trafficker wants. So it's easier then to kill them because they're causing them problems than if they were found, if the victim was found with
Are we in America?
them. Yeah. It's hard to
I mean,
believe, right?
I am not. I mean, I can't believe that you are using the word "kill" so easily, and I am saying to myself, this cannot be my country. It cannot be the country that is allowing sex traffickers to just kill their victims. Just kill them. Like it's so simple. Is it? Is that true?
Yes, well, it is because first of all, as you know, it's like the person is property. So like Sioux City is in kind of a farming area. And I grew up on a farm. So farmers own livestock, and they often will put a mark on there. They'll brand them, and traffickers often brand their victims with brand actually, which they is like a tattoo. And so they also put chips in them. So the first woman that we had at Lila Mae's house had a chip in her arm that was placed there by her trafficker so he could follow where she went. So we had to get that removed. Farmers put chips in their animals. So they are their property. And so one of the teaching moments that we have is to try to let people know that so it's really a man's problem for the most part because men are the ones who are primarily buying sex, and they are primarily the ones who are buying people for property for labor. So when someone pays for sex and they think that if they think it's a prostitute and she's or he's doing it, on their own, um, they don't know that the person is property of their trafficker, and they treat them like property. I own this person, so I can ask you to do whatever. The person who buys the sex is the same thing. So, so sometimes men will buy sex because so married men buy sex more than single men do. So if their wives don't do what they want them to do, they will go someplace else.
You said to me that you that the traffickers insert chips.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, of what my understanding is, won't they
Yes.
have to insert a chip by cutting someone open with their
Yeah. So
skin?
the chip is the the chip is like well, not even, well, let me see if I can get this real close. Okay, not even the length of my
Right,
fingernail. So
right.
they're real small, and
Okay.
they put them so people are using chips today um in many ways in companies so that a person may have a chip in their finger or their hand, and when they go into a company, their chip is like their ID. But usually traffickers will. So the woman that we had to take, she had it in her arm. So we had to take her, yes, to the doctor to have them dig it out. And so she had stitches, and she had a
My
bandage on there for a
God.
while.
I mean, I'm okay. This is some kind of information. I mean, we are listening to news every day about politics.
Right. Right.
And why isn't this on news? Why isn't this information on news? This is happening here. I mean,
Because a lot of people still want to keep this quiet. People who buy sex have to have money to do it. So the person, I always say to people, the person who's punching a time clock 9 to 5 probably is not the one that's buying sex the most. So a person who's buying sex has to have discretionary money to buy sex. So depending on what they want, we have a video that was done in Iowa, and he happened to be a pastor, Protestant pastor of a church somewhere in Iowa, and he got into buying sex through pornography, which is very common. So pornography has really increased and increased greatly during COVID as well, both by men and women. So women's watching pornography has greatly increased. But there's also research to prove that if people watch enough porn, eventually they want to act on it. And so anyhow, so this particular person was addicted to porn, and his wife caught him. And so he was getting ready to go to Las Vegas, I think. And the interviewer asked him how much he was willing to pay for the sex that he wanted. And he said $5,000 will get him whatever he wanted. So I've seen videos of, like, professional doctors going in and out of, hotel rooms, and during the lunch hour, so someone who punches a 9 to 5 clock at a packing plant is probably not going to be able to go buy sex someplace. So what you asked, why we don't hear about it more. So people who buy sex are probably going to be, not entirely, because everybody buys it, but so certainly people who have money, might control a little bit more, that they would offend people more by putting this on. I don't know. So it has been more in the news, but it's not a easy crime to prove.
Here you turn on any news, Fox News,
Right.
CNN, you turn on any news, all they speak about is politics. All they
Right.
speak about is bad news. And if they're
I
going to
know.
give us bad news, then give us
Yeah.
this bad news so this way
Right.
we can
Right.
do something about it. Not
Right.
politics, because it's not in our control. What can we do? Just go vote for the other
Right.
guy? But
Right.
at least over here, you can do something about it. You can take charge. You can
Yeah.
help. You speak about
Yeah.
it. You bring it in the front,
Yes.
and then the
Yeah.
community can go do the helping. And why aren't they doing that? And to me, it's like, killing people, putting chips in here. I just feel like I'm in a different world altogether.
As I read about it and educate myself and watch and talk to people, it's far more common than we think. So this first woman that was at our house, had been trafficked in every state in the country. She'd been since age 2, and she was 25 when she came to us. And she had been trafficked in every state in the United States, plus Mexico. So so parents traffic their kids for money as well. Some children
Male and
abuse.
female.
Yes, women traffic their kids as well. So,
Wow.
so this one case I started telling you about, the woman who called us, who was being trafficked in Sioux City by her husband. So number one, we wouldn't take her because she wouldn't be safe if she was still in Sioux City, and we wouldn't be safe to have her husband still wanting to traffic her. So we did refer her to Des Moines, another house in Des Moines. So normally, if someone's, even if they're just out of trafficking, and many women um, don't understand that term. I mean, to them, trafficking is not something that they've heard of. They know that they were being sold, and they know that they had to have sex with many people, but they may have also grown up in a home where sexual abuse was common, or domestic abuse, physical abuse was common. And so for some people, this is like the next thing. And it's an expectation that they have, that, and they may have been sexually abused when they were at a young age. And so it's at some point they know that they're going to be sold to other people, because that's just the next step. So for some of what we do with our women is to help them to understand what happened, and to understand the deep trauma that they experience. So when I first started to do this work, and knew I wanted to start a house, it was really, I had listened to a woman who had been trafficked when she was in high school, and she told her story when she was 50, and she now works with those survivors. Teresa Flores, she's a well-known, she's a writer who's written some books about her experience. And when she talked at this conference that I was at, and I was already working with, I was doing a lot of education, and she said, I know my trafficker. I know where he lives. This was in Detroit area. I still think he's handsome. And then she said, and then she pointed to the conference room door. And she said, if he were to open that door and say my name, to come to him, I would go.
Wow.
That's my reaction. She said, I don't know if I would go with him, get in the car and go with him, but I know that I would have to go. And he trafficked her and sold her for, I think, about 3 years and left her for dead on the streets of Detroit, naked, and the police found her. So I couldn't believe that she would do that after everything that she knows. And this, she was like 50, it was like 35 years later or whatever. And so I came home that day, and I have a prayer room in my house. And I love to do education, and I do a lot of it. But I knew that God was calling me to do something more. And so I just sat there and I prayed. And then God just planted the idea in me that I had to start a house for women who've been sex trafficked. Not that I knew what needed to be done, but I knew I.
Incredible of you to do that. But I also think that with all the things that you've told me just now about, I still can't get over the fact that killing and chips and so on and so forth. Don't you think you are taking a tremendous risk of the trafficker coming over to your office or house and being violent with you?
I can be. And so I've just told God, if you want me to do this, you got to make it happen. So God and I are not always in the same timeline. So we had to close because we for a while because we ran out of money to pay staff. And so but when I first started, we wanted to call the house. So I've had, people on the board who've helped and a lot of people in the community. So I went to people in the community first and said, do you think that Siouxland would support this? And their people said yes. And so we started, and we were donated a wonderful house. Um,
Great.
and so have done some renovations to it. But so we called it the Siouxland Restoration Center because I thought we would be restoring women to a life that they had prior to being trafficked. And come to find out, as I've worked with them, they don't really have a life to be restored to. Most of them have never had a normal life.
So explain to me how your organization works. So when they come to you, do you give them a roof over their head?
Yes, so we have a house, and so we have room for 7 women, which some people think, oh, you should have a lot of people. And I thought that initially too. I was looking for like 10 to 12. But so I'm sure you've been around women long enough in your life to know if you get like 5 women together, living together
Uh-huh.
with all of their own with all of their own trauma
Yeah,
and different cultures, because we have different cultures who live together,
yeah.
and behaviors. 5 is really enough. And so we think that 5 is really a good number. So the house that we were given had a basement that was unfinished. So we built 5 bedrooms in the basement and 2 bathrooms. And so they all have their own individual bedroom, and which is important. So for me, part of what I so believe in is teaching them that they are worth dignity and worth loving. And we want them to love themselves and to know that they are loved. Most of them have never felt that.
So how do
Um,
you go about doing that?
so, um, so all of our staff are what we call complex trauma informed. So back to this woman that inspired me to start the house. Um, that her response to that helped me to understand in a very small way, because I have never experienced that, um, the deep and lasting trauma that the victims will experience their entire lives. So we can help them to understand the trauma, and we can help them to live with the trauma as best they can with what they've experienced, but they will always have that trauma. And so that's important for people to understand. And it's important for us to understand that depending on the age that they were when they were trafficked, their cognitive development and their decision making is at that age.
I see.
And so they make some poor decisions in relationships in the house, but they make some poor decisions in relationships with people that they want to love as well. So part of it's teaching them that. Only one person has come to us with an education. Most of them have never gone to high school. Uh, I taught the 19-year-old when she came. People think I'm crazy when I say this, but I had to teach her that 2 plus 2 is 4. She never had any math, never had any science, social studies when she was supposedly homeschooled. So they go to GED to work for a high school diploma. We take them to all their medical appointments, and every one of them has a trauma-informed therapist from our community. So we have staff that are educated in what does it mean to have this kind of trauma, and how can we be present to them and help them, knowing that they have this trauma, but encouraging them to live a life that will help them to be the best they can be with what they've experienced.
Your organization allows them, or they stay with you for 2 years, and
They
within
can, yeah,
these 2 years, you try to rebuild their confidence and rebuild the love that they have missed all
right,
their lives. And then,
right.
how do you send them out again into the world? What do you?
Well, some of them also decide to leave on their own before the 2 years is up. And it can be because they just want to go do whatever they want to do. Or sometimes we have had to ask some people to leave because of what they've tried, what they've done in the house or whatever. So we don't allow alcohol or drugs in the house. Um, and they have to agree to our program. They have to agree to do counseling and to, you know, go to, take care of health appointments and whatever, be part of the group. So, so helping them to, um, so they have to look for the job themselves. So we do provide transportation for them and with them. So we provide 24/7 coverage, which is very expensive.
Wow.
So right now looking at reducing that a little bit. So our greatest challenge is money for staff. So it costs us over $300,000 a year to provide that 24/7 coverage. And
So
that's our biggest challenge.
let me ask you this: how are you um, making yourself, or your organization, is what I meant, known to the community or to the locality? So this way, people are not. So this way, people can approach you and say, here I am. I'm abused. Help me.
So agencies know about us, and pretty much in the community we're known. And oftentimes when I give a talk at churches or organizations or whatever, I'll have somebody come up to me afterwards and say, this is what happened to me, that they were trafficked. By the time that they do that, though, they are out of the life and doing okay.
What we're doing right now is we are curing people. It's not just your agency that I speak about, it's other agencies that I've interviewed as well. I mean, here we are speaking about America, and we are only looking into the after effects. It's such a
Hmm.
huge, beautiful, amazing country.
Right.
Why aren't we preventing this? And what are we doing to prevent this? What is America doing to educate our young ones so this way it doesn't happen? Because
Right.
prevention is
Is the
is
key.
better
Yeah.
than cure, right?
So one of the things that I'm doing, that I've been doing since I started in 2015, is that doing a lot of education. So school, like, so there's something that's called Aaron's Law, and it's really to get every public schools especially, and Catholic denomination schools can do the same thing, but talking to children and talking to their parents, and I talk to grandparents as well. So when I talk to um to children, like today I could have been in Nebraska talking to sophomore high school students about human trafficking. I talk to kids about social media and what are the signs. And so I talk about power and control because that's a lot of it. So somebody, and kids know people who try to take control of them, like a friend or a boyfriend or girlfriend. Those are like immediate things that they can watch for. And then someone who wants to have them just do what they want and not don't tell anybody, don't tell your parents that you're going to do this, those are kind of things. So we teach them some of the warning signs to look for. But with children, so primarily today, um, social media is how people get groomed to trafficking. So they look for people who are vulnerable, who are lonely, who feel they don't have any friends. So it's the most natural thing in the world for a teen to want friends, to be risky, to want a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And so teaching them what to watch for somebody who uh, you want to be a friend, but not to tell you everything to do. Because eventually, if someone is giving them gifts or doing something for them, they're often going to, or drugs especially, they'll say, well, now I've been doing all this for you. Now you have to do something for me. And I would say 99% of the people that I have listened to personally or watched like on a TED talk or heard, a story, most of them think I only have to do this one time. And then when they have serviced the one time, they're in, they can't get out. Prevention, absolutely. And part of it is education. So I'm finding, as especially this fall when I'm talking to all ages, um, that a couple of weeks ago I was talking to some fifth grade girls, and they were talking to me about this guy that was at their swimming pool, and this was in a small rural community in Iowa. Some guy they didn't know came up to him and wanted to talk to him and visit with him and kind of do something. And she was saying, she didn't want to do that. And then another little girl, um, who was at her table, because I gave a talk, and then the mothers were invited to, and then at lunch, then they were supposed to talk about what I talked to them about, which was great. Anyhow, this other little girl said, well, the same thing happened to me, you know. So it's really education. And so we need education in the schools. So parents also need education. So I tell parents at night, um, you could have the best kid in the world, but if they have social media available to them in their bedrooms when they're away from you, you have no idea what they're doing. And the child doesn't have to be doing anything that's wrong. They're just inquisitive. And that gets them maybe to a place where somebody's going to take advantage of
A long time ago, I was told
them.
by a dog trainer,
Okay.
and he said to me, he says, most of my work is not really training the dog. Most of my work when somebody hires me is to train the owner of the dog.
Right. Right.
So, keeping that in perspective,
Hmm.
yes, we are going and speaking in schools, and it's so minimum that I really don't think it really affects the entire country. What are we doing to educate the parents?
One of the things that I tell parents is that they have to know what's on their child's phone. So they can't say, I don't understand that social media. They have to. And so I'm really hard on parents. And then I also tell grandparents, sometimes kids listen to their grandparents more than they do their parents. So I put the responsibility on the parents more than I do the kids, but I teach the kids and little kids about being safe and all that.
Right.
Um, but yes, but it is increasing. So as I talk to people, I am finding that people know more now than they did even a couple of years ago when I was doing this. So yes, parents are the ones that have to know. And Snapchat is the #1 app right now that kids are using. And during COVID, there's the stock of Snapchat increased by 200%.
Shirley, I think you're doing an amazing, amazing job, and I think that this is all new to me. I have no idea what goes on, and you just shook me today with all the information that you gave me. Um, how, like I said, how do we make it bigger? How do we make it come to every home? How can we have every home know about this situation that goes on in the country? I mean, literally, the things that you mentioned to me
Right.
are 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 insanity, and it
Mm.
happening in America. That is even crazier to believe.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
is there a solution to this? Is there something, like I said, in let's not train the dog. Let's not. I
Right.
do not refer the kids as dogs, but I'm just saying
Hmm.
let's not train the kids. What do we do about training the adults? I mean, when the adult itself, or the mother or the father, is 16 or 17 years old, what's the kid to learn?
One of the aspects that needs to be changed is our laws. So if a person can't be prosecuted unless a victim testifies. So like for instance, I'm work closely with our law enforcement, as you can imagine. So um, you'll often see in the newspaper, on the news, that somebody is arrested for sexual abuse, when really, and that may be the only thing that law enforcement can prove or can use in terms of the way the laws are written, when they know it's trafficking. And so then people think, well, I don't hear trafficking going on. I know we have sexual abuse. So the laws need to change in one sense, in terms of being able to have law enforcement do more with arresting people and not having. I know they have to have people testify, but so the laws are hard in terms of prosecuting people. And then I think you're right in terms of like having schools have it be required that is taught. And I am finding in Iowa that there are more schools that are teaching um, either sex trafficking courses, or warning signs, or giving students some more information. So I am finding that has increased, but still, if we didn't have people buying sex, and we wouldn't have the problem. So it's it's very involved.
It's the same thing with drugs. If people were not buying drugs, we wouldn't be able to have sellers, but that problem has never been solved.
Yeah,
So I think it's
yeah.
the education is the right approach, in my opinion. Again, I don't know much about this, but if you educate the parents and you educate the children, then you have something happening, not today, but maybe in the next 10, 15, 20 years to come. Who's the person in the United States who's spearheading this topic, who's bringing all this to the foreground? I mean, who's doing that?
So if you go online and look up the United States Human Trafficking Report, they just put out one but they really only um, they can only really talk about the cases often that were prosecuted or that were reported, and that's so
Right.
low, compared to because if you look at how many cases in Iowa, for instance, that were prosecuted, I mean, it's so low, and we know how many people that are available. So I think if people were to understand, people who buy sex, if they really understood that people who are available for sex are not doing it necessarily because they choose to do it, if they could understand this person is somebody's property, and when I buy them for sex or for labor, because labor is a big problem as well. If when I pay for their use, I'm treating them as a piece of property. So I do believe that there are people who buy sex who are not necessarily awful people. I mean, I don't think they should be buying sex to begin with, but I think that if people were to understand that by paying for sex for this person, I'm really contributing to their bondage of sort, that they're not doing it on their own. So it's really, it's really a whole change of attitude in our country. And the way that we are today with people thinking, if I don't like you, I can shoot you no matter what. I mean, so when we're down to that, it's no wonder that people think, well, if I pay this money, I can do whatever I want with you, and they do. So yeah, it's an awful problem.
Give us one suggestion, give us one opinion, give us one way to move forward. You live it, you've seen it, and how should we approach it?
People with dignity,
As simple as that, huh?
as simple as that. And then we really do need money. So those of us who provide services can't provide services unless because we can't ask people just of their kind heart to be able to work with people who need trauma-informed care. So I really need money for our agency right now.
Tell us where we can find more people like you, and tell us a little bit about your organization, where people can find it. Like if you can give me your website.
Our website is, of course, www.𝐿𝐼LA Maes House, LILAMAESHOUSE.org. So we have a website. People want to send a direct check. It's Lila Maes House, Box 1281, Sioux City, Iowa, 51102. Any donation is greatly appreciated.
I appreciate you coming on, and I really appreciate all the work you do to help people who are in need. I thank you. I thank you a lot.